Hey, so this is going to be probably the first video I have where this isn't my original theory or idea. I'm presenting an idea that came by Catherine Ikram and Uzair. And they came to me. A few people come to me every so often with ideas, and this one I think just really has a lot of merit. So this is why I'm going to present it to you. They discovered something really interesting with energy and infodom and the mix. So let's get to it. So first, obviously, a few disclaimers. Okay, it's not an attempt to draw a line in the sand between info versus energy DOMs. Like this isn't any of that. We just want to understand each other better. So this information wasn't yet approved by Dave and Chan, but I have a feeling that it's good information. So eventually it should start permeating through to everyone. And I didn't discover it. I'm just trying to present it to the best of my ability. And we are planning on having a full discussion and presentation in some kind of podcast, spoken word format like that. So the link will be added in the description if it's already happened by the time you're watching this video. This is obviously a work in progress and it is incomplete. So how did this discovery happen? So first of all, Dave and Chen discovered there's a possible coin between info and energy dominance, right? Or it's an expression in type. Where it's from, they have an idea where it comes from. For me personally, I can't promote that because the jury's still out on where it actually comes from, but like from what I'm seeing, they could be correct, right? Now what happened is we get a whole bunch of objectively typed people that we interact with in social settings, and then we start seeing conflict. There's like a pattern of conflict between info versus energy DOMs. They just don't get along for some reason. There's something going on there. And so Catherine Ikram and Uzair, they're trying to figure out the source of this conflict. And this is kind of how the idea came up. So they got a whole bunch of examples, a whole bunch of reasons and what's going on with the conflict and what does an energy DOM conversation look like and what does an info DOM conversation look like. Okay, so first let's start with energy DOMs. So it seems like what the energy DOMs are actually trying to always talk about and process and go back and forth about is they're trying to process the congruence between who they are and how they're perceived. And so they're talking about how they're perceived and they're talking about who they are and how it matches, how it doesn't match. And that's constantly their conversation, right? And they seem to be trying to like minimize this gap so that they're completely congruent. So how they are perceived is who they are and who they are is how they are perceived. There's no difference between the two, right? So this gap sort of minimizes, right? And so what are they looking for mostly? They're looking for transparency of character. They're trying to see that, hey, do I know who you are? Are you hiding yourself behind a persona, right? Or are you trying to unite your persona with your identity, right? So they associate congruence with trustworthiness. Like the more congruent you are, the more trustworthy you are, right? They want to know that your intentions or actions are matching, right? And that character should be unambiguous, that we should know who you are, right? You shouldn't be one person one day and someone else the other day. What's going on with that, right? And they seem to believe, this is what seems to happen, that our character is judged and policed by others, right? So how do they change their identity? How do they change who they are? Based on mismatches, based on, is their character lining up with how they're perceived? Oh, I'm perceived like this, but I'm actually like this. Let me move. Let me move how I'm perceived to who I am. Let me move who I am to how I'm perceived. Let's make sure that both are the same, that both are congruent, right? And so because of this, information doesn't need to be consistent. And there's an interesting twist on why this is true. We'll get to that at some point. And contradictory information is used to discover character incongruence. So like, just give an example, like if they see, for example, that you are saying one thing and then doing another, that seems to be something with information, right? They do see that as information, but it's contradictory information about your character. And anytime there's a contradiction in how you present yourself versus who you claim to be or who you are, that's when, their ears will perk up and they'll start to ask questions and they'll start to get triggered by you, because for them, the most important thing is that you're obviously congruent. And so contradictory information is going to show them that, okay, wait, this person's contradicting himself. There's some incongruence here. What's going on with that? We don't trust this person now, right? And they're constantly trying to process that, like that, and they're talking about that. That's their conversation. You'll find that they're talking about themselves. They're doing a self story a lot more than the infodoms. They're talking about themselves, how they're perceived, others, how others perceive them, and that sort of thing, right? And obviously the other functions and their type is playing into how they talk about themselves, but this is really the conversation they're having. And for infodoms, this seems to be a boring conversation, and vice versa. The info conversation seems to be kind of boring for them because they're trying to always process congruency. And when they point out that there's an incongruence in your character, they see it as being helpful. Hey, I'm helping you. I found out that there's, you're not congruent here. There's a contradiction in who you are and who you're saying to be. You should probably fix that, right? They want to fix you in some way, right? And that's kind of how they correct each other and police each other. And then yourself should not align with information because information is flawed, right? So here's the other thing: like, how can you align your identity with information? Information could be flawed, like their information could be false, right? They can't trust, since they're not infodoms, they can't trust their information to be correct. So really, all they're trying to do is find that congruence, and as long as they have congruence, then they're okay. It doesn't matter what the information is. Overall, the tribe will balance out, right? So infodoms, what are they trying to do? They're trying to find congruence between identity, like who I am, and what is true, information. They're trying to minimize this gap between who I am and the information. So if they have, so for example, for me, I had information that like vegetarianism was better. It might be wrong, might be true, but this is kind of, for me, the truth was vegetarianism. And then I therefore had to move who I am to this, right? I had to become congruent with my information and not with how I'm perceived, right? I'm perceived one way. I have no idea how I'm perceived. I'm not even paying attention to that. I don't even care about that. And I am something else, right? And so because there's like this big mismatch between who I am and how I'm perceived to be, I'm allowed to be something different. And I'm allowed to just keep up this persona to keep the tribe happy. And yeah, it might seem dishonest. It might look like I'm being conniving or misrepresenting myself, but I'm doing this so that I have permission on the other side just to be different, to have a different identity, right? And really what I want in the end, obviously, is congruence, but I need to go through this separation first, right? So we actually need, infodoms actually require a gap between identity and persona. Who we are can't be how we're perceived to be. Why? Because who we are needs to be able to stray from that. It needs to be able to be different. Because the tribe we're aware that the tribe won't accept us without all the information. And giving each person all of that information over and over again, like every person you meet, hey, no, I'm not a threat. Like, here's all the information I have, why I am who I am. No one wants to hear that. Nobody cares about that, right? Maybe only the people that are really close to you, right? And so in the end, yeah, sure, you might want to spread that information so that when everybody has that information, everybody is moving to it, and now we no longer have to misrepresent ourselves, right? So for example, let's say I believed slavery was true, right? And so if I were to spread this across the globe, now I can finally come out and be like, hey, I'm a slaver, right? Or vice versa. Slavery is bad, and I want to hide that. Or let's say I want to, like, I don't believe in Nazism, right? So I'm going to put up this Nazi persona, pretend to be a Nazi on the outside, and on the inside, I'm going to hide refugees and people in my attic so that they don't get killed, right? And so that mismatch allows us to align ourselves to truth and to information, right? And so intentions are explained by information, right? So one of the biggest we'll talk about the triggers and blame, but whenever you ask an infodom about their intentions, they'll tell you, oh, my intentions are this because this is the information I have. This is the information I'm trying to align myself. My intentions are this information. That's my intentions, right? And anything that seems like an incongruency, anyone who's saying, oh no, you're incongruent here, it's just a misperception, right? You're not seeing things correctly. Because I am actually congruent to the information, and you don't have the information. Therefore, obviously, it'll seem like I'm being incongruent, right? And our characters judge and police by correct information, right? And so that's why the infodoms are constantly doing the information game, talking information, spreading information, what is true, what is not true, trying to align on information, because then we know if we have the same information, then we have the same character. Then we can trust each other because we're on the same page with the information, right? So the commonalities is bad information can lead to bad character. Yeah, if we have bad information, we can have bad character. And so the infodoms, in order to fix this, they fix the info. They focus on the info and trying to get the info correct. And that's why they take the info so seriously, because it does inform our character. Whereas the energy doms, they try to just fix the character. They skip the whole info part. Let's just align our character to how people perceive us, and then we won't have any problems, right? And another thing we've noticed is that there's a different game going on, right? There's a different hierarchy. So the info DOMs judge others based on their information. So there's a hierarchy based on information, right? Who's smarter? Who's solved this, right? There's some kind of information hierarchy. And the energy DOMs judge others based on their behavior, how they behave, what their character is, right? Oh, he's a good guy. He's higher on the totem pole, or something like that, right? And so when the conflict arises, we're trying to force others to play our game. So when info DOMs force energy DOMs to play the information game and disgrace them and throw them down on the totem pole, well, that's not fair, because they're not good at the info game, and we're forcing them to play that game, and we're putting them down in the hierarchy, and vice versa. The energy DOMs will judge others based on their behavior, and they will put info DOMs down on the totem pole because they're not being congruent, or their character's bad, or something along those lines. They're not good people or whatever, right? So here's the blame, how the blame comes in, right? Here, how do we feel attacked by the other group? So infodoms, they can't be trusted because they can misuse information to justify behavior. This is correct, right? So any behavior I might want to do, if I have like this bias, hey, I want to do this, I can twist the information in order to allow myself to do that, right? I can reframe things. I can change the information to get to do what I want, right? And so this is kind of the danger, and that we can see in infodoms, that, hey, you know, they might not be stable. They're not always, their intentions aren't always clear. They're not always congruent with who they're appearing to be. So we can always be suspicious of them because they can just all of a sudden change the information they believe in, right? They're hiding their identity. It must be because they are ashamed and they're bad. So when infodoms hide their identity, it's not because we're bad people. It's because we are aware that it would take a lot of information in order for people to accept us. So rather than give out all that information, we will hide. Or so, and a lot of the time we do create that persona so that we can protect ourselves from being judged and from being ostracized by the tribe, because the tribe will never get us, quote unquote, get us, right? And because we're so incongruent, we'll put on this ruse that our identity and persona are the same thing. And so we'll pretend like, hey, look, my identity and persona is the same, when in actuality, our identity is very different than what our persona is portraying, right? And so, yeah, this is a little bit dishonest. And this is one of the reasons why the energy DOMs are constantly processing this and processing how people come off versus who they are, right? Because they want to sort of out the people that are sort of hiding, right? And incongruencies indicate a dishonesty and nefariousness in all cases. This is what the energy DOMs thinks. Oh yeah, definitely. Anytime there's an incongruency, that means the person is bad. Well, it's not true. It's not in all cases. It's in actually very, very few cases that this is true, but it is true. Like there are infodoms out there that will twist the information or hide the information, hide who they are, and they might not actually be good people, right? But this is, most of the cases is not true. We just know and are aware that we're not going to be accepted, right? And so then infodoms also feel attacked if incongruences are pointed out. And we said before that this is what the energy DOMs are constantly doing to help each other, pointing out, hey, you're incongruent here, you're incongruent here. If an infodom is told that they're being incongruent with how they appear, their identity isn't matching their persona, we feel attacked because, oh, they don't get us, right? And so this is kind of where the conflict starts coming in, right? And so the blaming on the energy DOMs, how do energy DOMs feel attacked? Well, energy DOMs seem and appear like idiots, right? They can't be trusted to make rational and competent decisions because they're not stressing the information. They're not trying to make sure that the information is congruent, and they're not making decisions and mapping their identity based on correct information, right? And they might appear to be dumb on the outside, but for some reason they seem to be getting along, and that's just because they're doing the congruency game. They're doing a different game, right? We might think they're shallow and have no depth, right? And so how infodoms see depth is the fact, hey, I've got a persona and I've got me, and I can go as deep as I want, and the information can go as deep as I want it to be, because I don't always have to broadcast it. I don't always have to be congruent. And so I'm now allowed to have depth. And so people who are always congruent, it doesn't seem like there's much depth to them. They don't have a lot hidden away, right? There's not a lot hidden there. And so this is something that energy DOMs might feel blamed over, but there's actually a lot of depth in trying to get your character to be congruent to who you are, right? It's just a different kind of depth, a different kind of game. They're echo chambers, and they suffer from groupthink, right? And so the fact is, like, maybe they might all be echo chambering the same info or giving off the same info over and over again, but that doesn't matter. Or they might even have bad info. It doesn't matter. Or they might even have great info. Even if they have great info, it doesn't matter because they're not aligning themselves to the info. They're aligning themselves to how they're being perceived. And the tribe is correcting their identity in that way, right? And so it might seem like they're groupthink, but in actuality, it doesn't even matter. Like it's just and they feel attacked if the information examined too closely. Oh, why are you doing this? Oh, you want to give me a reason? Oh, you have information. Let's examine your information and cross-examine you and make sure information is all congruent. They will feel attacked if we're making sure and checking that their information is congruent, or if we're asking them to change a behavior that might be congruent solely based on information, just based on information. We'd be like, oh yeah, I proved to you now that that this religion is correct, so now you must convert. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that, right? I don't care what the information you say. Even if I believe in the information, I'm still going to be this person, right? I'm not going to change who I am based on info, right? Okay, so this is now speculative a little bit, but on relationships. So there's two types of energy DOMs, and Dave and Chan are saying that like the two types like to get together, right? So there's like the two types is blast last or consume last. And what actually happens when they do form a successful relationship, they actually work together and produce congruent information in some way, right? And this is how OP came about. OP is about, and like the information is mostly good because they are making the information congruent between their double activated blast versus their double activated consume, right? And so because they're able to play that congruency game with each other, they can trust each other, and then they can actually exchange information and not feel attacked on matching their information because it's matching between the two of them, right? And so their information ends up getting worked on and becoming good. And so the speculation is also two types of info DOM can work together and produce congruent characters. And I think Tom and Lisa Bilyeu are probably a good example of that, where like they are actually producing very congruent characters, and it's all based on info, and it's all based on the fact that one of them is double play and the other one's double sleep, right? So this is speculation, but this is kind of like an idea of how relationships can actually correct people and make them even harder to see if they're info or energy, right, in some way. And yeah, obviously there's more on this soon. This is just scratching the surface, but I really just wanted to present this to you guys because this seems actually like quite a big discovery. Now that I've seen this pattern, I just keep seeing this over and over again. So hopefully this will actually even help us in personal growth now that we're starting to see it. So anyways, stay tuned for that, for more information on this. I hope to get Uzair, Ikram, and Catherine on the channel soon. And have a good one, everybody.